Hello students, this is Nilofer Miss, your SS teacher. Today in part 3 we are going to learn about World War II in outline. See, so in very starting it is written, with the commencement of the World War II, the world was again divided into two groups. Okay, here commencement means what? Commencement means beginning. When this World War II begins, the world was again divided into two groups. On one side was the group of Allied nations led by England and France. On the other side was the group of Axis nations comprising, it means including, again comprising means including Germany, Italy and Japan. Besides these, some other factors with war-driven mentality had entered into this. See, now you have to remember two groups. One is Allied nations, other is Axis nations. Which countries are there in Allied nations? So, England and France. While in Axis nations, Germany, Italy and Japan. Okay. These were the two main groups. This was not only the reason that there were groups and so the world war happens. No, there were other factors also. See, it is written, no, war-driven mentality had entered into this. So, what were the other reasons also? Japan attacked the American Navy at Pearl Harbor. Okay, who attacked? Japan. On whom? American Navy at Pearl Harbor. See, Pearl Harbor, there is a movie also on this. You can see that movie. You will understand easily how it happened. As a result, America gave up on its neutral stand and retaliated. It means back attacked. As Japan attacked, then America also attacked. It joined the Allied nations, thus making it stronger. Before this attack, America was neutral. Here it is written, no, gave up on its neutral stand. It was neutral, neither it was with the Axis nations nor it was with the Allied nations. But after this attack of, Japan, it just gave up the neutral stand and it also backed up. And which group it joined? It joined the Allied nations. As America joined Allied nations, it became even stronger. When the war was going on in full swing, it means it was going so well, everywhere there was war, all over in war, America dropped atom bombs on the two Japanese cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, in order to stop Japan from moving any further. Now, this is very famous incident. Everybody knew about this event. This incident happened that time in World War II. So, America dropped atom bombs on the two Japanese cities, which is Hiroshima and Nagasaki. That effect even we can see today there. 1,24,000 Japanese citizens lost their lives and there was absolute destruction. Japan surrendered when 11th August 1945 in World War II came to an end. Because of this atom bomb, there was loss of many lives in Japan, and so Japan surrendered itself, and as it surrendered, the World War II came to an end. This was an outline of World War II. Let's see further now. See, now comes effects of World War II. After World War, what happened? There were effects, immediate effects. What were the immediate effects? Let's see. First is economic effects. Obviously, economic effect would be there. There was so much loss of money to make the weapons, and because of the destruction everywhere, so obviously economic effect would be raised. This war had caused horrendous destruction in the world. Horrendous means horrified. Okay. So, this war had caused horrendous destruction in the world, whole world. All the countries were involved in this. All the involved nations had incurred huge expenses. And what were the expenses? So, America had spent $350 billion and other nations had spent more than $1,000 billion. Property worth the same had been destroyed too. Obviously, these were the money they spent plus property was also destroyed. So, that is also the loss. England lost its property worth 2,000 crore, and about Germany, one can't imagine. There is no imagination what would be the loss of Germany. Out of imagination it is, that much loss it was. The nations of the world gave more importance to the production of arms and ammunition. As you have seen earlier that the production of ammunition was there, it means they were making the guns and the spears and all these things which were used in the war. So they have not produced other things. So what happened here? So there was a scarcity of things for basic needs because the production was stopped. So obviously there would be scarcity. Production reduced, inflation increased, people were struggling for livelihood. The citizens of the nations, whatever they were wanting, the things were not over there, not available for them. So they were struggling for their livelihood also. There was scarcity of necessary goods in the market. The economic life of people was shattered. As a result, the nations of the world were pushed into an economic depression. There were major changes in the world politics and economy. So all the people around the world, all were in great depression. They were in economic depression. They were not having the things for which were necessary to live even. The eatables, the things which they need to make the food for them. So such necessary things were also not available in the market because the production was stopped. This was the economic effects. Now see the communism. This happened in China. Communism in China. Many nations of the world were impressed by the way Russia had made a fast progress with its communist measures with the Bolshevik Revolution. China too was impressed. Now here what is communism? So it means the power of full country was in the hands of one person. One person was looking about all things. That is communist measures which was happened in Russia. Russia was progressing very fast with its communist measures. It has made the measures like that one person will rule overall and one person will take all the decisions. So there was a fast progress, and because of that the other nations of the world were also impressed. So as the other nations were also impressed, they were also thinking that we also can progress our nation by communist measures. So here China was also impressed. See, Japan had become weak after the Second World War. Just now we have seen that the atom bomb was thrown on two cities, Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and because of that Japan even surrendered. So after the Second World War, it had become weak. Under these circumstances, its control over China had receded. Obviously, because of such weakness, it could not control China. So as soon as Japan lost the control over China, taking this advantage, the person in China took this advantage. Who is it? Mao Zedong. So here, taking advantage of this, Mao Zedong established communist rule in 1949 at the end of a revolution in China. So when this revolution was going on, at the end of this revolution in 1949, Mao Zedong also established communist rule, same as it happened in Russia. Okay, so this was communism in China, how it happened. Next is the beginning of Cold War, long-term effects. Till now we have seen the immediate effects. Now we will see long-term effects. Okay. After the World War II, the world was divided into two superpowers. One was America and the other one was Russia. During the war, both the nations were friends. See now, here, these two nations were friends during the World War. But as the World War completed, this whole world was divided into two superpowers. Two superpowers were there in existence. One was America and the other one was Russia. But after the war, the differences of opinion between them went on increasing. They were friends, but now what happened? They were having different opinions on different matters. They were thinking the different way. So because the difference of opinion between them, it increased more and more. Thus the democratic America and the communist Russia became mutually opposite groups. See, how was America? America was democratic while Russia was communist. So obviously this was different, and so these two nations mutually became opposite groups. Other small nations of the world joined these two groups according to their convenience. It means other nations, whatever they think that they will be benefited with whatever nation, according to their benefits, they joined the nations. There were two parts, and according to the convenience of their own nation, these small nations joined these two groups. The war of words and the war of ideologies that both superpowers initiated in order to support or oppose each other's opinion created the atmosphere of Cold War. Now here they were not fighting. Okay, they were not fighting with arms and immunities, but it was Cold War. Their opinions were fighting. Their ideas were fighting. Many a times the situation for the Third World War seemed to be created. Sometimes this opposition was so exaggerated that it seemed that now the Third World War will be started. Okay, so this was the beginning of Cold War, and which was long-term effects. You can understand there were two main nations, the two superpowers, Russia and America. Now our next point, United Nations. At the end of the First World War, the League of Nations was formed in order to establish world peace. This we have already learnt, that the League of Nations was formed, but nobody was listening. So, at the end of First World War, this happened? No. But the fact that the World War II occurred meant that the League of Nations was a failure. Obviously, even after establishing this League of Nations, there was World War II. It means it was a failure. At the end of World War II, on 24th October 1945, remember the date when the World War II finished. See, it came up to an end on 24th October 1945. The United Nations was established with the purpose of peace, security and coexistence in the world. Now, what was established? The United Nations. Its headquarters was to be in New York. So, after the League of Nations, now the United Nations was established, and what was the purpose? Again, the same purpose was there, to establish peace, security and coexistence in the world. There won't be other wars between the nations. That was the aim of the United Nations. America's efforts to establish United Nations had already begun from the time it joined the Second World War. As America was neutral, but as it entered the Second World War, that time only it had begun. It was thinking, its efforts were there to establish United Nations. The American President Roosevelt made 4 important announcements regarding freedom while giving his message to the American Congress with the intention of human freedom, peace and security. Now see, 4 important announcements were done. By whom? The American President Roosevelt. What was that? See, the first one was freedom of speech and thought. Each citizen of my nation will have freedom of speech and thought. Even the other nations which will be joined into United Nations will have this freedom. Freedom of religion, economic freedom and right to freedom from fear. It means nobody would be afraid of other. These were the 4 major important announcements. See, which are they? Freedom of speech and thought, freedom of religion, economic freedom, right to freedom from fear. Later, President Roosevelt and the British Prime Minister Churchill prepared an 8-point agreement while they were on a ship in the Atlantic Ocean, which later came to be known as the Atlantic Agreement. Now, these 2 persons were there in the sea. They were on the way, they were on a ship in the Atlantic Ocean, and that time on the ship they made an agreement. That agreement was having 8 points, and this agreement, as it was made on the way on the Atlantic Ocean, that's why this agreement is also known as Atlantic Agreement. The agreement included matters like maintaining freedom and sovereignty of every nation, peace, security, social and economic welfare and disarmament. Okay, see, all the points are very easy, you can understand easily. Freedom, everybody knew. Sovereignty of every nation, peace, security, social and economic welfare and disarmament means no fights. Then the foreign ministers of Britain, America, Russia and China met in Moscow for world peace, which came to be known as Moscow Declaration. So after this Atlantic agreement, the foreign ministers, which nations were there? The ministers from which nation? So they were from Britain, America, Russia and China, these 4. They met in Moscow. Moscow is name of the place. Why they met? For world peace. And so as they met in Moscow, so this was known as Moscow Declaration. In November 1943, Three superpowers held a conference in Tehran. Now after these three, see 1943, three superpowers, they held a conference in Tehran. The representatives of 50 nations prepared the agreement for the United Nations at Washington on October 24, 1945. The 51 member nations declared the establishment of United Nations. India is also a part of it. Since then, 24th October is celebrated as United Nations Day all over the world. Presently, 193 nations are members of the United Nations. Okay, let me make you easy for this. The representatives of 50 nations. How many nations the representatives were there in this meeting? There were representatives from 50 nations. And the 51 member nation declared the establishment of United, that we are going to establish this United Nations, and yes, we all are going to listen to it. Okay. And even India was there. India was also a part of it. It means India will also listen. It will also follow the rules and regulations of the United Nations. And thus, on this day, it was established, 24th October. You have to remember the date. So, on this day, United Nations Day is celebrated all over the world. And presently, in today's date, how many nations are there? How many nations are members of the United Nations? Total there are 193 nations. Okay. So, we will keep up to here in this video. Further, we will go in the next video. In the next video, we are going to complete the chapter. Thank you. Revise the chapter from your textbook. If you are having any doubt, you may call me.